Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages over 21, welcome back to Bourbon of the Week. My name's Chris. I'm going to be your host for today, and you are looking at a 2-ounce sample of 13th Colony's Double Oaked 2023 release. Now, last year, this company became a household name with their first release of their Double Oaked product. It was 9 years old, 5 years in one barrel, 4 years in a second barrel, with the last 2 years adding maple staves to that. So I'm excited to see how this compares to last year. We will do a video on that eventually, but for right now, we're going to pour up this 2-ounce sample, put it through the gauntlet, and see where it falls on price, taste, drinkability. Let's do this. I only have a little bit, so we got to make this count. Look at that color. So I obviously wanted to make sure I did not mess up that pour because we only get one shot at this. Time for the traditional sip. Cheers, y'all. Oh my God. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, this is 13th Colony Double Oaked, the 2023 release. Now, if you had the 2022 release, you probably loved it just like everybody else seemed to. This is supposed to be the next level, right? 9 years instead of 10 years. This comes in at 70% corn, 21% rye, 9% malted barley. This is 136.8 proof compared to 135.3 proof. So the proof went up, the age statement went up, and everything about this should be just as good, if not better, as last year, but we're about to find out about that right now. We're going to start with drinkability, 136.8 proof. How does this compare to the ethanol kick on it? Listen, I don't know if it's the double oaking because I've had double oaked products that still sip hot. I don't know if it's the maple staves that they add. So last year it was 9 years with 5 years in one barrel, 4 years in a second barrel, and then 2 years of that last 4 years they added maple staves. I'm assuming it's a very similar process, maybe like 5 to 6 years in the first barrel, 4 to 5 years in the second barrel, but still that 2 years of maple staves. I don't know if that's an exact thing, so don't quote me on that. But again, I'm just assuming that they're sticking to a very similar process. Something about this glass right here, whether it's the Georgia heat coming out of Americus, Georgia, or those maple staves that just take the ethanol kick out of this while still providing the proof at 136.8 proof, that just allows you to have everything you love about a cask strength whiskey without being like, damn, that sips super hot. The other crazy part about this is 21% rye. You can expect a spiciness to this, but it doesn't equate to an ethanol kick at all. Again, for 136.8 proof, I don't know, maybe it's the sample bottle versus bottling it regularly. I don't know if that helps when it comes to these things, but this right here is a fantastic pour when it comes to drinkability. One more sip, just a little guy, and then we'll give you a score. Now, please don't take this and run with it and be like, this guy's telling me I can go out and drink 136.8 proof and I won't get any ethanol kick on this. That's not what it is. There is an ethanol kick on this at all. It doesn't warm you up all the way down, though. It's definitely easier to drink than 136.8 proof. So we're going to go high 8s, maybe low 9s. I'm going to say low 9s, 9.13 when it comes to drinkability on this. There's not much at this proof that I think drinks easier than this. Now, there are some bottles that have opened up over time. Unfortunately, just being a sample bottle, I won't be able to tell if that does this. But for me, right now, 9.13 seems like a fair spot. And as you know, up next, we're going to get the taste on this, and that's where I get confused on this one. This has every flavor profile you can imagine. You got sweet, you've got spicy, you've got salty, you got savory, you got chocolates, you got oak, you got leather, you got tobacco, you've got citrus on this. I just really don't know where to start, and I don't know where it ends either. The finish, don't even get me started. I could probably drink this one sip tonight and still have it on my palate tomorrow if I never brush my teeth. This right here, I'm going to say it might overwhelm your palate. I don't know if you're ready for this glass right here. If you're a seasoned whiskey drinker, I think you're going to absolutely love this. If you're newer to whiskey and you don't like 136 proof whiskey that tastes like, I don't know, everything under the sun, maybe this one isn't for you, but just take a look at the color on this bad boy right here. It looks like Coca-Cola. It looks like coffee. It's chocolate. It's vanillas. It's caramels. It's that maple you get from those maple staves. Everything that you could expect in this glass is in this glass, and I gotta tell you, it's so well done that none of it stands out, none of it's overwhelming, none of it's too much, and none of it's not enough at the same time. This glass right here is just phenomenal. Now, here's the thing that scares me about smaller distilleries, and when I say smaller, I mean compared to the Wild Turkeys, the Bardstown Bourbon Companies, the Buffalo Traces of the world. This 13th Colony out of Americus, Georgia is a smaller distillery. Sometimes they strike gold. The 2022 release of their Double Oaked Bourbon struck gold. Now, People want to follow up on that. They want to get their next bottle out there while their name is hot. That's not the case here. They took their time. They made sure to put out another fantastic bottle. And now they have 2 double oaked releases, which I think a 2023 Whiskey of the Year contender, because the 2022 release was as well. And I gotta say, they just followed up with another banger. Now, I did mention at the beginning of the video that I do want to try this next to the 2022 release. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to have enough out of this particular sample to do so, but I will say this. I know some people in the whiskey world that probably got their hands on this, so if I can get another sample, I will make sure to compare this to the 2022 release. That being said, the flavor profile on this, I don't know what else you're really looking for. Again, I think for somebody newer to the whiskey world, it might overwhelm your palate, but if you've been in this for a while, if you're looking for that next best thing, this is it. This is what I'm looking for when it comes to the future of whiskey. It's so rich, it's so savory, it's so dense, it's so complex. I absolutely love this glass. All of the flavors that I named before, and then some. Every time I take a sip, there's a new flavor behind it. This glass right here, one more sip, and then we'll give you a score when it comes to taste. Now, if you don't already know, I work in the ice cream industry, and for some reason when I drink this, I can just not get the flavor caramel salty pretzel out of my mind. We have a caramel salty pretzel. It's vanilla ice cream with caramel mixed with chocolate covered pretzels, and that's exactly what I'm getting on this particular glass. It's a very heavy, very rich caramel mixed with that vanilla from the vanilla ice cream. You get that chocolatey note, then you get that saltiness almost, like I'm talking about with the pretzel. This glass right here just has so much going on. I love it. One more sip, I promise, that's it. 9.43. I always leave room for improvement, but I gotta tell you, I don't know what else they could really do to this particular glass to improve the flavor profile. 9.43 might be one of the highest scores I gave when it comes to taste, but this right here, I honestly, I'm looking for something to not like about it, and I just cannot find it. 9.43 is what we're going to give it when it comes to taste. And last but certainly not least, for the first time here on Bourbon of the Week, we have an MSRP on a bottle released at undefined. So, this bottle was released in a quantity of 3,216 bottles. It was released in Arkansas, Tennessee, Georgia, and Texas, and then on Bourbon Outfitters and Sealbox, I believe. Bourbon Outfitters did it their own way. Sealbox basically has a pro program. They release it to the pros first as a lottery. Then you had an opportunity to buy it after that if there were any left. And of course, it was a you-know-what show. It was released at $199 on Sealbox, I believe. I don't know what it was at Bourbon Outfitters, and I don't know what it's at around the rest of the country, aka the other 4 states that it was released in. It was not a distillery release, so you couldn't go to 13th Colony and buy this. That being said, I reached out to 13th Colony. I said, what was the MSRP on this? And they said, we didn't really release one, but we were expecting somewhere between $130 and $160. So we've got to call it at what? $145 to be fair? Now, I understand, right? Low supply, high demand, you're obviously going to get the value that you can for this particular whiskey. The question I have that I don't know the answers to is 13th Colony sold it last year for $80 MSRP. That means they probably sold it to the people who were selling it for $80 for what? That $50, $55 mark, so they can make their money on the back end. Does that mean that 13th Colony now marked this up to 100, 115? So now they have to sell it for 130, 160? Or are they still selling it for 50 and these people on the back end are just recognizing the demand, so they're selling it for 150, 160? That's a big difference. Because if they marked it up on their front end and then they had to make it up on the back end, that means 13th Colony values this a little bit higher than they did last year. Or do the people that are selling it on the back end recognize that we can make more money on this? And that's just a question that I don't have answers to. I hope that made sense to you the way it made sense to me, but I've already seen this on the secondary market at not too crazy of prices, to be quite honest with you. So I'll say 145. We're going to go with that for MSRP, and let's take one more sip and we'll give you a score when it comes to price. Here's what I will say. $80 was definitely too cheap last year. If you had an opportunity to buy this at $80 and you didn't buy all of them, you did yourself a disservice. That being said, $145 seems a little bit high and $199 seems way too high. I don't understand why online retailers are more expensive than in stores, right? You have a brick and mortar, you have overhead. Online retailers just have a warehouse and then they ship. So again, I'm not in the industry, so I don't know. But at the end of the day, $199 is way too much. $145 is probably just a little over what I'm willing to pay. And that $130 mark, which is what they told me the low end of this should be, is probably where I want to be. One more sip, we'll give you a score when it comes to price. My brother-in-law is going to be excited because I only have one glass tonight. That being said, 8.37. We go 7.0 if it's an average bottle with average taste and average drinkability at $50. This is above average on both of those things. Very well above average when it comes to taste and drinkability. And then obviously a little bit above average when it comes to price as well. So an 8.37 seems like a fair spot for it. But hey, while I had these scores up, let's send it over to this week's episode of my thoughts on what I've been thinking and talk about the secondary market real quick because I want to know your opinion. For this week's My Thoughts on What I've Been Thinking, we're going to talk about the secondary market. Now, for me, there's three parts to the secondary market. I feel like one gets talked about a lot, one doesn't get talked about enough, and one's kind of newer to the secondary market. And let's bring that up as well. Let's talk about the first guy very quickly. This is the guy that's going out. He's buying Blanton's for $60 and he's selling it for $140 to some random dude who just wants to try Blanton's for the first time. It's the guy that's buying Stag for $60 and he's going out and he's selling it for $350. This guy right here is the worst person in the world. I understand there's money to be made, and if you want to make money off of this, you don't have to rip people off. Now, this guy does not exist without the second guy, and that's why I don't think this second guy is talked about enough. The person that's buying these off of the secondary market might be the real issue. This guy might be the guy that's the actual problem, and he doesn't get enough, I don't want to say credit, but enough value in this conversation when it comes to actually destroying the secondary market because he has the opportunity to do that. This is the guy that has unlimited funds, or maybe he doesn't have unlimited funds and he's just going out and buying bottles of whiskey because he's told that's what he needs in his collection to have a collection of whiskey. Now, I feel like within the whiskey community, at least the ones that I hang out with, we've made a shift in the culture that we don't support the secondary. We don't want those price tags. We don't want people spending $150 on Blanton's, and we're trying to tell you about it. But yet, I went out and I watched a TikTok today of a guy who actually sells liquor, sells wine, sells liquor, and said that Jim Beam has the same mash bill between Baker's 7, Maker's Mark, Booker's, and everything across the board is the same mash bill. So there's still misinformation out there that people are watching and not being educated enough on, that they're making these decisions that they need these whiskeys by spending a bunch of money. So the first guy sucks. The second guy either sucks or he's not educated. Either way, that sucks for that particular person. But the third person, the new person into the equation, is the distillery. Now, distilleries are saying, hey, if they're selling our bottles for $300, $400, $500, instead of selling it for $50 and $60, why don't we sell it for $150, $200? Because then they don't make as much money off the back end. So maybe it's not worth them to sell it on secondary. I feel like I'm for this. I'm not quite sure yet because without the secondary market, we don't have this inflation when it comes to whiskey. I understand. But there's such a supply and demand issue right now in whiskey that if anybody's going to make money off it, I don't want it to be that first guy. I'd rather go back to the distillery so they can get more product with more age and more good stuff into my collection than some random dude sitting on the internet that bought a bot clicking buttons faster than me. So I got to know in the comments, do you love the secondary market? Do you hate the secondary market? Do you love the first guy, hate the second guy? Do you like that distilleries are marking up bottles a little bit higher to combat the secondary market? Let me know what you guys think. But in the meantime, let's get back and see where this scored when it comes to price, taste, drinkability. If this is your first time checking out the channel, maybe you don't understand what's about to happen here and you're thinking to yourself, why does he now have Wild Turkey 12 year on the table? This I just got last week. I tried it out. I loved it. It became #1 last week, which means this came in at an 8.97, which defeats the #1 spot, taking over the Wild Turkey 12 year, but obviously we have to try them side by side to make sure it deserves to be there. Let's try these out very quickly. I'm glad I have a little bit left. We're going to start with the Wild Turkey 12 year. This is just so good. 101 proof coming out of Wild Turkey. I mean, that's just so good. We're talking price, taste, drinkability. Price, I gotta give it $60 for this MSRP. If you can go to Japan and get it for US dollars, absolute steal. Even at $150, I think it's a pretty good price tag. That being said, I gotta give price to Wild Turkey 101. Taste and drinkability are easily going to go to this double oaked over here. You're talking 136.8 proof. This drink's so easy. The taste is phenomenal. This doesn't fall far behind on taste, but it definitely falls a little bit behind when it comes to drinkability. This is our easy winner, 8.97 versus 8.83. Just so damn good. Listen, if you've made it this far in the video, make sure you click that like and that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. This bottle at an 8.97, the only problem I have with it is the fact that I don't have more of it. This is going to be a 2023 Whiskey of the Year contender. I can guarantee you that. And I'm not going to have anything to compare it to because all I have left is By the end of the night, nothing. But in the meantime, make sure you check me out on Instagram at Bourbon of the Week. Go click that follow button over there. Check out our Patreon page and our Discord. Both those links in the description below. As always, please don't drink and drive. Always drink responsibly and stay healthy, stay happy. Stay trying smaller distilleries because America's Georgia's got one of the best. Cheers, y'all. Oh my God.